Hello and welcome to Spotlight with me, Matt Perkins from the Salvation Army's Youth and Children's Ministry Unit. In each episode, we meet a local Salvation Army youth leader and find something out about their ministry with young people. Today's guest is Natasha James from Staple Hill Corps. Welcome, Natasha. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks.
Good. So at Staple Hill, you are a commissioned youth team leader.
Yeah.
And that's the Salvation Army's role and title, I guess, for someone who's gone through some training and the processes to be identified as the key person for young people. But I assume you also do it with a team.
Yes, I'm very lucky to have a team. There's a team of kind of 3 key people, 5 or 6 of the wider team who support the young people on a week-to-week basis at Staple Hill.
Brilliant. And so we're going to get to know a bit about you in a moment, but also about that ministry in the Corps of Staple Hill. We're going to get to know you through My Life in Pictures. So you sent me some pictures. They're going to come up on the screen now. So the first picture is going to describe you and your family.
Yeah, I'm from a very small family, just got a husband and a dog. So my husband Phil, who is a social worker in Gloucestershire, and then our little dog Pip.
Lovely. And this is you out on a dog walk?
Yeah, so many of our weekends are spent out in the countryside walking the dog. Love it. We love it.
Very nice. Thanks, Tasha. And then the second photo. So when I asked for a photo to describe what you do for work, you didn't really have one that was exciting enough to share. And so you sent a photo of you drinking coffee and you look extremely happy. Does your job make you as happy as that coffee does?
Yeah, it really does. I'm one of those sad people who loves their job. I love coffee and I love my job. I work for a tech company. I run a department of the business called Client Services, and we deliver kind of project management, implementation, training, customer service to universities. And we sell a number of systems to them, and I really love my job.
Brilliant, Sasha. And the current room you're in is actually your office, isn't it?
Yeah, this is my little home office station, so I'm locked in here most of the time. And it's really good. I'm very fortunate to have a job that I love.
And then the third question and picture is you in the garden. Talk to us about that.
I've become a COVID gardener. So prior to COVID, it was things in pots that maybe you watered once every so often. But being at home and I guess having not so much out and about things to do, I wanted to make the most of the garden, so I started growing vegetables with varying levels of success, and it's just a constant battle against the slugs really, but I do love gardening.
Brilliant, Tasha. And that photo was pre-COVID, was it? This was when you were just getting into gardening?
Yeah, this was just getting into gardening. My 30th birthday, I wanted to buy myself a Japanese maple, an acer and an apple tree, and so that's what I did.
Wow. So does the garden now look quite different as to when that photo was taken?
Yeah, so that you can't see so much of the orange fencing anymore.
Tasha, we need a before and after photo. I think when this goes live, in the comments, just put the after photo, because I think people are going to want to see that.
It'll be bad.
Is that all right? Is that a deal?
Maybe.
So Natasha, the reason you're on the call is to talk to us about your youth ministry, and that youth ministry happens at Staple Hill Salvation Army. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so this is actually the 10th year that I've been doing youth work at Staple Hill Salvation Army. And I've just been really fortunate. The church has a really good ethos, lively, local and loving. And yeah, I've had the absolute joy of helping disciple a load of the young people at our church in Staple Hill alongside a whole team of adults, because it isn't just the youth leaders, there's other people in the church that hugely support too. And yeah, it's just been a great 10 years of helping a lot of young people who are now definitely adults, and that makes me feel very old.
That's brilliant, Tasha. So what does youth ministry look like?
It's kind of changed slightly, as I'm sure most things have in relation to COVID. So pre-COVID, we had our Sunday morning, I guess you'd call it kind of Sunday school youth, and then we'd always have a Sunday evening youth fellowship where we'd do various different things, sometimes house groups, sometimes games and activities, sometimes a trip to the park, whatever we fancied. And then when COVID came, we swapped and we took everything online. So we did a weekly online youth group at the same time that we would have done it at church, which was at 10 a.m. Can you believe? During lockdown at 10 a.m. youngsters were logging into Zoom to chat to us. I couldn't believe it. I was very happy to see them all every week for the whole period of solid lockdown. And now we're kind of back at church, doing church youth again, and we're just starting to get back into things. So we haven't reintroduced the youth fellowship bits yet, but I think we will in time. But I think one of the key things for myself and the other people who help with the youth group a lot, so particularly Joe and Michelle, it's very much about trying to build relationships with the young people. So then you might get in contact with them at different times about other things going on in their lives. You know, we've had a number of people who are off at uni and have had their kind of first experiences of uni during the pandemic, and I think that's been quite tricky for some of them. And it's just really, for me, about making sure that we're trying to build relationships.
That's really key, isn't it? So not necessarily program driven, but people driven. It sounds as though what's happened. And I think it's testament to those relationships that actually, as you say, when everything stopped almost overnight in what everything we knew about church in particular, that actually young people were signing into Zoom at 10 a.m. in the morning to be a part of church youth group. So do you put that down to the relationship? Is that the real driving force that's actually kept them together through the pandemic, but also now you're seeing the fruits of that in that they are coming back?
Yeah, I mean, I'd hope so. I'd hope it's part of the relationship. You always wonder whether it's they have to come until they're a certain age because their parents are making them. I think
they do to church when it's in person, but on Zoom they didn't. Sure.
I don't know. You know, their parents might be like, log in now. I don't know. I think it is, and also they're all very supportive and friendly with one another, which I think is really nice. You know, it's quite a large youth group. It's made up predominantly of children from church who have been brought up in church and have known each other since they were tiny, and I think that helps in them kind of encouraging each other to come to things.
But I think you've been present, Natasha, and your team have been present when actually a lot of young people lost contact with a lot of trusted adults in terms of school, in terms of sports clubs. That's really where I see you have, and I hope a lot of youth workers have across the country, is that's when they stepped up, because that's when young people probably needed us most.
I do really feel that people have come back in to church and still have those friendships and those connections and those relationships that they've had without a feeling of not knowing someone. So for example, you know, we did a lot of things on Zoom, and so you see the young people growing up a little bit, and a year and a half to not be in church is a long time. And for particular teenagers, you know, you go from being tiny to shooting up and being real men type thing. That a lot of people, when they come back to church, they're kind of surprised. Oh, so-and-so's voices sounds really different, or they look very different, or they've changed quite a lot. And I think the fact that we'd seen them week in, week out on Zoom meant that then they didn't feel awkward with us, whereas they might feel awkward because people are making comments about how they've changed in their appearance or things like that. And so I do think that helps. It helps because you continue to know them and hear about how their week's going and get an understanding of the things that maybe haven't been so great and have been really good in their week. We used to do this thing called headaches and highlights. So we might talk on Zoom about, you know, what's been the headache of the week, what's been the highlight of the week. And in the middle of the pandemic, there might not have been that many highlights, but we tried to find them so that they could be like, oh yeah, you know, we were out in the garden because the weather was really nice. And that was a good way of, you know, getting to know them better.
Yeah. Do you know what? Across the country, youth leaders now are writing down the phrase headaches and highlights. And whenever they next meet their young people, I reckon they'll be using that. I love that. It sounds as though at Staple Hill, young people are very much at the centre and are first thought, not afterthought. How does that come about? Is that part of the leadership team's ethos? Is that just how it's always been?
I like to think that it's like that. I think there are a few people who really do it intentionally. So, for example, I think I probably neglect a large proportion of our congregation in conversation and getting to know them because I'm really focusing on getting to know young people. So I think, you know, I would never begrudge someone who wasn't interested in talking to young people, but I do think we have a really good family first ethos as a church, and I think people care about the young people, all of that kind of thing. But I think it, more than anything, has been the passion to want young people to get to know God, and then on that to want young people to know that their thoughts and their feelings and their questions, concerns, doubts are all really valid, because I don't think any of us get through our Christian life without having little bits of doubt sometimes. And we don't all have kind of like whiz-bang testimonies of faith. And then on that also, developing other young leaders.
So Tash, it feels to me that as a youth team leader, what really drives you is sort of journeying with young people, discipling them as they grow up through church. Tell us some of the joys that brings, but also inevitably some of possibly the struggles.
Yeah, I think joys wise, it's really great to hear about things that they feel really proud of, or things they've done really well. So there's a few girls actually in our youth group who are really good artists, and when they kind of show you the work that they've done and they want to show you the work they've done, it makes you feel really nice that they're kind of like, yeah, I did this, and you just get to share a little bit in their journey, or their exam results, or helping them fill in their first parking fine ticket because they don't want to tell their parents they got a parking
Which is
ticket.
probably a joy for you, but not a joy for them, because they've got to spend out like that.
Yeah, it just feels nice. It feels nice that they come to you and like, oh, things are going wrong, can you help?
Yeah, sure.
The sadness is probably more around the young people that have chosen to not stay at church. Not specifically at our church. I'm always happy to encourage people to go to different churches if they feel our church isn't for them. But I think people who choose that right now God isn't for them, and you just, it always makes me a little bit sad. I am a crier, and it does make me sad to think. You see faces and you think of specific names, but you just kind of hope that you've opened the door a little bit and you've showed them a little bit of what God can do in their lives, and then it's up to them to think about that as they then grow older and go on to do things in life. And you never know, at some point they might walk back through that door when the opportunity strikes. But I do think that is the kind of sad, the grey lining rather than the silver lining of youth work.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tash. But having an impact on their lives when you have them in your youth group, and as you say, not knowing what impact that has in the future and later on in life. Tash, I think we touched on struggles, and I think any youth leader would say amongst the joys, young people, particularly over the last few years, have really struggled in a number of areas. And I know we've spoken before, but one area that you've really picked on is just the influence of the likes of social media. Talk to us a bit about that and how they do struggle.
Yeah, I think self-image is a really challenging thing in general, particularly teenagers and hormones, and everything's changing, and then the complexity in that of having time that you're not spending with your friends because you're at home in lockdown, and then you have a lot of comparisons either with things you see in social media or with your siblings who may be very different from you, but you're naturally kind of comparing yourself, and it may be a way in which potentially it makes people feel not so great about themselves. And so there are a few things, particularly around self-image, that I'm really trying not to do. I try not to praise people for having a nice hairstyle or having the coolest new trainers or whatever, because naturally that's a really good way of connecting with people. You spot something is different and you say, oh, really nice trainers, or whatever it may be. But actually then maybe we're perpetuating the problem in our youth work by doing that. I try, where possible, to focus on complimenting who people are, the things that they've done that maybe show their creative side, or the things that they're doing that are really nice. So if they've done something really caring and you notice it, or they've invited somebody along to church, you want to be praising that, not praising how they look or what they wear. And I just think that's something we need to be really, really mindful of.
Tash, that's really important. I think there's a lot of learning we can take from there. As adults, can we just look a little bit deeper, beyond the surface? Can we notice things about young people that actually they might not even notice about themselves? Can we pick up something about their character, their personality, or how they've engaged with others, and praise that as a way of starting the conversation? And I think actually for young people, that's probably so refreshing, because it hits, doesn't it, at a deeper level? How can we act differently to what their screens are telling them? Thanks for that, Tasha. It's great. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's just been a privilege to get to know a bit about you and what you do with young people. So bless you in your ministry at Staple Hill.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Please join us next time, where we'll be shining a light on another local youth worker and finding out more about their ministry with young people.